Hello folks, Mark back here with another vinyl update. It's been a couple months, but I have been here picking up stuff mainly in and around the Cleveland, Akron area and shops around town, and then also record shows here and there as well. And a few things online in addition to that. But the last 3 weeks or so, I've stayed away and have really been going through all the stuff I bought. And there's still a stack of things I haven't quite listened to yet, so we'll go through those first. And then the rest of it I have. There's been quite a lot of things I've picked up, but I'm only going to show you some of the highlights just because it would make for a very long video to show you every little thing. Mainly, again, the stuff that I tend to pick up is things of the new wave, post-punk, electronic variety. That tends to be the area I stay in. But I sometimes drift in and out, like reggae and psychedelic and 60s stuff. So you'll see a little bit of everything here. Also, a thread that goes through a lot of these records. Many of these have been on my list to buy for years upon years, some as long as 30 years. And I finally have pulled the trigger on some of these things lately. So you'll see as I go through them. So let's get started. Wide Boy Awake. This is a quartet out of the UK that did 3 singles. They released a 5-track EP here in the US, compiling a lot of the tracks from those singles, but one of them was not on there. One of the B-sides to the single was not on that US release, which I have. So it was on this, Bonaventure, and so I went ahead and picked it up. And the band was fronted by Kevin Mooney, who used to be one of Adam's aunts, Adam and the Ants, from the Kings of the Wild Frontier era. But when the Ants broke up and he went solo, Kevin formed Wide Boy Awake. Good disposable dance pop. Always quite liked them. Here's something by the Brothers Johnson, Right on Time. The fantastic single I've had for years was Strawberry Letter 23, the cover of the Shuggy Otis track, produced by Quincy Jones. Their version, to me, is definitive. It is just as funky and seductive and sultry as it gets. Check it out if you haven't heard it yet. Strawberry Letter 23 by the Brothers Johnson from Right on Time. Never did have this album, so finally picked up a copy that was pretty clean, and I look forward to giving this a spin. Brilliant, Kiss the Lips of Life. This is a trio from the UK, dance-oriented trio, formed by Youth, who used to be in Killing Joke, and Jimmy Cauty, who later went on to form the KLF. So in 1986, they released this album, Kiss the Lips of Life. Typical dance club pop fare, but good songwriting, catchy stuff. Always liked it. Here's another one I finally pulled the trigger on. Ted Nugent's first successful band. They were called the Amboy Dukes. This is Journey to the Center of the Mind. And I'm not a big Ted Nugent fan, but I do like Amboy Dukes. And this song is incredibly catchy. If you don't know it, look it up on YouTube. Journey to the Center of the Mind. So I'm looking forward to hearing what the rest of this album has in store. And this is a reissue on red vinyl. Kind of cool. Here's something been on my list for a while. Translator, college rock band from the mid-1980s out of San Francisco. Very jangly, kind of an REM kind of vibe to them. They had an almost hit in 1982 with Everywhere That I'm Not from their first album. And then they had another one that got played on MTV called Unalone. Both of those songs are fantastic. So if you're interested in finding out what Translator are all about, look up Everywhere That I'm Not or Unalone. Those are fantastic. This is their 4th and last album called Evening of the Harvest. Been on my list for a long time, so finally picked it up. Looking forward to spinning that. The Jazz Butcher, another group I've been a fan of for a long time, with this an album I never did have by them called Fishko Tech. And this comes from 1988 on the Creation label. And this is, if you're not familiar with them, jangly kind of beat poet kind of music. I don't know. Beat poet maybe isn't the best description. A lot of drinking songs, a lot of kind of laid back, I don't know. Sometimes they remind me a little bit of Dylan or Modern Lovers. If you're into that kind of thing, check out The Jazz Butcher. There's a couple of related records. Here's an album I've been after for years and years. This was impossible to find in the 1980s. I think I came across a couple of copies in the 90s and passed it by. finally found a copy online of this. X-Ray Specs, UK punk band from the late 70s. This is their one and only album, Germ-Free Adolescence. Polystyrene, the late Polystyrene was their vocalist. And fantastic new wave guitar, saxophone-led music. And this is a reissue on pink vinyl. And fantastic group. I've had their 45s for ages, but never did have their album. So nice acquisition to my record collection there. Great sleeve as well. And then when they broke up, some of the members formed this new wave act out of the UK called Classics Nouveau. And this is their first album called Night People, issued over here in the US simply as Classics Nouveau with this cover. And just good dance pop. If you're into things like Ultravox, early Duran Duran, Spandau Ballet, I don't know, even a little touch of XTC, they're fantastic. I really like Classics Nouveau, but I'd always considered them a singles band. I have all their singles, so finally getting around to getting their I think they have 3 albums total. So that was their first. Our Daughter's Wedding, synth pop trio out of New York City. This is their first EP called Digital Cowboy, containing a re-recording of their fantastic debut single, Lawn Chairs. If you like early synth pop like Depeche Mode and OMD, look up Lawn Chairs by Our Daughter's Wedding. You'll be quite a fan. They did an album called, I think it was Moving Windows, the following year on EMI, and then they broke up. I have that album. Love Moving Windows, but never did have that EP. Graham Parker, somebody I've been kind of getting into lately, a little bit more. Another one I've had singles by forever, but never did buy his albums. This is one from '76 called Heat Treatment. Look forward to hearing that one. If you're into things like Elvis Costello, Nick Lowe, Joe Jackson from the late 70s, you might like him. Third World reggae band, big fan of them. This is an album called Arise in Harmony, one I never owned by him, so look forward to hearing that. And here's an album that I avoided getting in the 80s when this came out because I was such a fan of this group, The Cult. Such a big fan. 84, 85, they were probably my favorite group. Really loved Dreamtime, really loved Love. Was just fanatical about this group. And then finally, when this came out, I felt kind of betrayed because it was very much in the AC/DC Led Zeppelin metal vein, and I was not into that at all during that time period. So I pretty much, after the Love Removal Machine single, I bought that. But when this came out, I refused to buy it. And so over the years, of course, I've kind of gotten over it, and I've heard it quite a few times, you know, people's houses, parties, record stores, and I actually caught them on tour a couple of years ago when they were doing like an anniversary tour and playing this album all the way through. And I remember thinking, you know, next time you see this album, grab a copy. And I did, for $5 in great shape, US copy and gatefold sleeve. So I'm glad to have that in the collection. Darren 4, this is the newest album by The Tide. Sort of a California West Coast psychedelic band. Very good. Psychedelic I use kind of loosely. They're more like a later Birds or Flying Burrito Brothers, and even later music by Felt, if you were into that group Felt from the late 80s. They remind me a lot of that, and I do like how the cover references Scott Walker's 4th album, Scott 4, with the typeset Darren 4, Darren being the lead singer of The Tide. And instead of being on Philips, like the Scott Walker album was, they just put their logo, The Tide, here with the Philips logo there. So, great album that just came out. Now, here's some stuff I have listened to and things I've just picked up. A couple things, Record Store Day releases that I picked up from the last couple years. They went on closeout, so they were down to $13 a pop sealed. So I finally got the Buzzcocks, Another Music in a Different Kitchen, $13 sealed, and it comes on orange vinyl. One of those albums I've no excuse for not having it. Should have had it ages ago, but hey, better late than never. And I keep getting recommendations on this one, From Genesis to Revelation, the first album by Genesis from 1969. This, again, $13 sealed. Great stuff. I'm going to work my way through their catalog as we go. You know, I had to say, you know, I got into Genesis at Misunderstanding. So, you know, I was about 10, 11 years old. So Duke and Abacab tend to be the records I like by them, and this self-titled album. Don't really know the Peter Gabriel stuff all that well, so I figured I'd start at the beginning, From Genesis to Revelation. So, Trio, Da 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 Da. This is a song you might know, big, kind of a club hit in the early 1980s. They were a German trio, and this was their biggest song, Da 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 Da. I'm sure you recognize it. It was in a Volkswagen commercial at one point. Pretty sure it was a Volkswagen commercial. Picked this up. I already had the US 12-inch, but I picked this up because it was an English 12-inch, and it was on a label that I used to follow a lot called the Mobile Suit Corporation. And this was a label headed up by David Ball, or partly headed up by David Ball of Soft Cell, that issued a lot of releases from around the world. They did, they released stuff with a world vibe to it that was British. A Monsoon, the UK act Monsoon, and Vicious Peak had releases on Mobile Suit Corporation. Now here's one from a guy named Billy Bremner. He was a member of Rockpile, and this is a fantastic record, probably one of the best of the bunch. A 12-inch called Shatterproof from 1984. Fantastic record. Really been getting into Rockpile and Nick Lowe and Dave Edmunds, kind of exploring deeper their solo work, and always knew Billy Bremner was a member of the band, and so when I saw this, I picked it up. And boy, fantastic guitar work, just dreamy, in a catchy song. Look it up on YouTube if it's out there. Shatterproof, Billy Bremner. Can't say enough good things about this song. Really, really love it. Here's a record that I was a little bit underwhelmed by. I thought I might like it a little more than I did. Diamond Version, it's called CI. This is on the Mute label, came out in 2014, and features vocals on one track by Pet Shop Boy Neil Tennant. So I thought, wow, this should be pretty good. It's okay. It's a little like Mouse on Mars or Aphex Twin. It's kind of minimalist, bleepy, blippy synth electronic stuff. Not incredibly melodic. I tend to like my stuff with a little bit of melody. This isn't really that, but good nonetheless. I mean, I'm glad I picked it up, but it's not something I think I'm going to spin a whole lot. Diamond Version. Here's something else been on my list for ages. Big Star. This is their second album. It's called Radio City. I've had the first album and the third one forever and loved them. And I always knew I'd like this album. I just, was waiting to find the right copy, sometimes. And I wanted a copy on Ardent. I didn't want one on the Four Men and a Beards label. I wanted an Ardent. I wanted something as close to the original as I could get. So I did find a copy on the Ardent label. And boy, this album lives up to all the hype. I play this for people and they can't believe it was recorded in 1974. It sounds so current. And it's a little apropos because I recently saw Teenage Fan Club live, and they're, of course, huge fans of this group, as are, R.E.M., Matthew Sweet, you name the alternative act from the 80s, and they're probably into Big Star. Even This Mortal Coil, a lot of the This Mortal Coil tracks are Big Star covers, well, a few of them. Here's a post-punk band out of Manchester called the Mothman, and an album they did called Pay Attention that came out briefly, I believe, in 81, and was produced. Some of the tracks were worked on by, not really produced, but worked on by Adrian Sherwood, and released on the On You Sound label, his label. If you're not familiar with Adrian Sherwood, he's a fantastic producer and remixer who's done lots of mixes in the 80s for Depeche Mode and Ministry and acts like that. And then he has his own label, On You Sound, where he issues a lot of really heavy dub music under his own name and African Head Charge. So when I found out he worked with the Mothman, I was very interested. And Mothman features some ex-members of Durutti Column, back when Durutti Column was more of a band from their first couple releases. They broke off when Vinnie Riley pretty much took Durutti Column in a solo direction, and they formed the Mothman. And this was their second and last album. Good. If you're into like Public Image Limited, post-punk with a reggae dub kind of feel on some of the tracks, check this out. And this re-release came with a download of some extra songs as well. Group out of Manchester, the Stockholm Monsters. This is an album they did. I forget the name of it. Well, I don't actually know what the name of this album is. But I found it for like $5, and it's okay. It's called Alma Mater. Okay, kind of a post-punk vibe, not too unlike Joy Division and early New Order, more guitar-based New Order. But they've never been a band that's really knocked me out, and that record I thought was okay, but it didn't blow me away. Surrealistic Pillow, another record, been on my list forever. Jefferson Airplane's one of their biggest releases from the mid-1960s, and this, of course, has White Rabbit, Somebody to Love, She Has Funny Cars, and Plastic Fantastic Lover. Great record. I've had it digitally for a long time. Nice to finally have a vinyl copy. Tom Tom Club, their cover of Under the Boardwalk. Found a 12-inch extended mix on this one recently, so that was kind of a nice find. Tom Tom Club being, of course, Tina Weymouth and Chris Frantz of Talking Heads. Cosmetics, don't know much about this group, but they did put this 12-inch out called The Crack on IRS in 1982. Good new wave dance pop. Huge fan of Grace Jones. Have Warm Leatherette and Night Clubbing. Love those records, but never did have Living My Life. This was an album she did in 1982. Features The Apple Stretching and also Nibble to the Bottle and My Jamaican Guy. Those were 3 songs I did know. The rest of it I didn't know. So great to get a copy of this. Love Grace Jones, the one and only. She's a unique talent, to say the least. Gary Numan album I never did own. I own all of his early albums up to Berserker, except for this one. And so I finally bit the bullet on Dance. This has She's Got Claws. That was the single from it. When he's going more in a funk direction, Mick Karn of Japan plays bass on some of the tracks on here. And you can tell it's got that kind of a vibe. Just a couple more things to show here. Blue in Heaven, Irish band from the mid-1980s. I was really in love with an album they did in 1985, simply called Blue in Heaven, produced by Martin Hannett. They did another album in 86 called Explicit Material that was also good. Then never heard from them again. Looked them up recently and found out they did a single called Across My Heart from 1984. So it wasn't on the first album, so I went ahead and got it. It has a version produced by Martin Hannett, which is really nice and spacey and Factory Records-ish. And then there's also a version by Hugh Jones, great producer that I love pretty much anything he puts his name to. He's produced everyone from The Sound to Echo and the Bunnymen to The Charlatans to... Look up Hugh Jones. You'll be amazed at all the records he has produced through the 80s and 1990s. Fantastic producer. Merchandise, band out of Florida. This is an EP called Desire, and the fantastic post-punk vibe to them as well. They're signed to 4AD now, but this is one of the earlier releases. Black Uhuru's Anthem, another record, been on my list for a while. Finally bit the bullet on them. On this one, saw them recently live, and they were fantastic. If you like good reggae, you can do no wrong by picking up a Black Uhuru record. Mothers of Invention, Freak Out. Found a copy of this for $10. Been wanting to hear this for a long, long time. Kind of been a little gun shy on Frank Zappa, and thought I'd dip my toe in the water and get this. And it is fun. The fourth side of this kind of annoyed me a little bit, but I really like the first 3 sides, and I would definitely recommend this album. And then finally, Nancy Sinatra and Lee Hazelwood, the fantastic Some Velvet Morning. If you've never heard that, please look it up. Also, Jackson is a classic. Great, great stuff. Fantastic voices. Not much more to be said about it. Been looking for this for a long time, and a good copy of it, shall I say, and finally came across it. So there you go. All right, so at 18 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and close the book on this video for right now. Got some other stuff to show, but it'll have to wait for another video. And besides, I'm going to Chicago. I'll probably bring back a few things from there as well. In the meantime, enjoy yourselves and keep spinning vinyl. Talk to you soon.